Super. Amazing, amazing. As you can, maybe you can imagine, I'm also a bit excited. So, I'm Tim Stegmann, and I also have the honor to welcome you, also on the behalf of Hamburg Football Association, because I think to host this seminar for the first time in Germany, together with a medical school, is something unique. And when we talk about something unique, when I started my master in 2020, I think, and then we had the, well, as you all know, a challenging situation, but it was also possible to be 1 year afterwards in Porto. And then I get to know these beautiful people, and also I get to know Professor, and Felipe told me, look, usually he's not traveling. I said, okay. So when Felipe told me afterwards, I think 2 months ago or something, or 1 month ago, Professor will come here to Hamburg, it's incredible, it's incredible. You cannot imagine what that means, because usually you're not traveling, and so it's a great, great honor for everybody of us that you are here, and I hope everybody is taking really, really advantage of this, because there's not, I hope there are many more years that you can place questions, but we all know someday it will not be possible, and I think life is about taking opportunities, so I'm really glad that you took the opportunity, and yeah, for me it's a great honor to speak here, even as a former student of this master. So we take a dive deep into tactical periodization. As Felipe said, we will not be able to explain everything into detail because it's not possible. For me it took at least 1 year to understand a bit more, and so I will be traveling with you, and hopefully I will learn from you and together with you. Just about my person, I'm 33 years old, and I'm here originally from Hamburg, so it's also something special to be in the most beautiful town of the world. No, but in Germany at least. And my coaching career started here in a small club, and then I had the opportunity to be in the youth academy of VfL Wolfsburg for 6 years. So I had been with under-19 team, assistant coach, team manager, organizing things, organizing a lot of stuff inside the youth academy, assistant of the director, assistant of scouting, like a young person who wants to be in football is searching opportunities, and then you have to work a lot, I can tell you. Then I was responsible for under-10s, under-11s. I had some coaching with all other teams because we built up everything. And in my last season in Wolfsburg, I was assistant coach of under-17. Then there was the opportunity to join first team football, professional football, as assistant coach in Würzburg. So I took this opportunity in the third division. I don't know how many people of you are watching third division football in Germany. The guys who are watching, they know sometimes it's hard, it's tough to watch because it's not that nice football, and there are so many different influences inside the game. You can plan, you can train perfectly a week, and the result is different. This is professional football, and some of you know and experience it every week. And there are so many details which influence your performance. So, but after 10 matches, the coach who brought me there was sacked. I said, okay, that's not a good start. But I was lucky, I was really lucky that I was allowed to stay there. So we were able to change things. Nothing to do with tactical periodization, just a bit of some changes, a bit of luck. And then there was the opportunity to come back to Hamburg. The people who are not knowing Germany, but maybe you have heard, sometimes there's a difference between Bavaria and the rest of the country. So as you know, Würzburg is in Bavaria, so I'm really happy also to be back home in Hamburg and also to do education. So what I'm doing at the Hamburg Football Association is I'm doing coaching education together with my colleagues, and I've selected teams. So I'm responsible for the age group 2009, 2007, was responsible for 2005, so under 18, under 16, under 14, and we will start with 2011 in summer. During the pandemic, or when the pandemic starts, it was a tough situation for everybody, but it also, at least for myself, it gives me or gave me some time. So when I heard, okay, there's a professional master in technical periodization, I was like, and I assume like most of you guys, I have heard a lot of stuff about technical periodization, a bit there, there's a huge article and so on, but I always had the feeling I didn't get it. And so, okay, there's an opportunity, there's a chance, now maybe you have the most free time, spare time to decide on your own about of your life, so I took the opportunity. And it was a start of a travel which really shaped my eyes, because in the last year I had also the opportunities, thanks to Hamburg Football Association, to be a long time in Spain, or several times in Spain, because I did a master also in Madrid, in cooperation with Real Madrid. It's called Master en Dirección de Fútbol. It's a master who is concentrated a lot of youth development football, elite youth development football, and currently I'm also doing, I started at the same time, but it takes 2 years, I'm also a student of the master in professional football in Barcelona, which is more or less about the methodology in Barcelona, which was really interesting, because it started more or less at the same time, like Vitor Frade in Porto, and there was another professor, Paco Serrullo, who also started at a certain time to see things different, and even they had a different starting point. They come really close to each other, but Paco Serrullo, well, for him it's not a problem, but for the people in Barcelona, it's better that you are not telling them, because they see it more as a contradiction, but from my perspective it is. So it really shapes, for me, it was also such influential, because it shapes everything of how I see my life, my entire life, and this is why I'm glad to talk about it. So, not talk about me and so on, but let's go to football. How we are perceiving the training of technique, usually. When I was young, and even when I started coaching, it was an approach like this. You want to start dribbling? Okay, let's put a lot of cones in there, and you can have the dribbling. And there was one, we usually deal with this every coaching course, to say, okay, you have to have this exercise and that exercise and that exercise. And you have to imagine, when I started my master, we had 7 days, more or less 6 hours a day, online, Zoom meeting, like with 10 or 15 people, just watching, trying to understand something. And then there were always these bits when Miguel Lopes talked, or some other great people talked, and they showed something. They showed an exercise. And everybody was waiting, is this an exercise for technical periodization? Can I use it? If I'm doing this exercise, is it technical periodization? No, it's not. Well, it depends. And even this approach, which for me is also a bit typical in Portuguese, it depends. It's for, if you're a strict German, you want to have a clear answer, yes or no, but it's not like this. It's not like this. So, we have this tendency, and I feel it also really tough in Germany, I don't know about other countries, that we are always looking for recipes. That everybody wants to have something I can always use for everything, and I will always win. If this is possible, a World Cup would be really boring. and every season would be really boring. But it's not about this. So you have to put things into context, and I would like to tell a story I've heard also in the master about Romario. I hope everybody still knows Romario, former striker of Brazil, World Cup winner, and striker of Barcelona. And he was asked by journalists, Romario, can you show us a trick? Can you show us a skill of you? Because, you know, you're Brazilian. For you it's born, right? It's part of your DNA. And he said, no. Well, can you show me where the ball is, where the opponent is? Then I can show you, but I cannot tell you. I cannot show you. And I said, how could that be? How could that be? You are Brazilian, you are Romario, and you cannot show us a simple trick? No, it's not possible. Because he needed the context. So some other guys of you maybe even know this kind of thing. For the Spotify generation, this is a disc. Before there was a bigger black one, maybe you also know. And I want you to remember your first album or your first music disc you heard. Maybe it was Michael Jackson, maybe it was, I don't know, Rolling Stones, Beatles. And I assume that you cannot tell me the track list right now. But probably if the third song will end by the last accords, then you will already know what will come next. And why is this? It's because the brain is working in connections, in context, and not isolated. So if we want to train our game and the game of football, we have to do it in context, because the brain is working in circumstances. Circumstantial? Yes. I'm sorry, this is also a defect from the last year. My brain already sometimes is working better in Spanish than in English. So, I had also the opportunity 2 years ago, to be with the national team of under 15, age group 2007, because there were not any scouting tournaments in Germany like usually they are. So they invited players in order to see them training and have a training camp. So I was there, and we had the guy, former player, right now he's playing in Gladbach, but before he was player from St. Pauli, a really, really talented guy. And you all know this kind of warm-up. Guys are dribbling around, and then the coach says, okay, do scissors or something like this. And this guy, and he, believe me, he was from Hamburg's perspective one of the most talented guys. He was not able to do it. And you have to imagine a kid who is at the national team training really wants to perform well. So he was failing, but he was thinking that he's failing because he has no talent. But the opposite was right. He was failing because he was not able to imagine the context. When I get to him and I said, look, I'm your opponent and you can do it like this, then it worked. Because he just played intuitive. So I just want to put this in question to say, okay, are you practicing the exercise? Or do we as coaches organize so much and are caring so much about organization that it works, but we are not trained? So, as an example, also to create even more doubts for you. We have just exercise, maybe most of you know it, it's a passing form, so they pass, they have these dummies in order to orientate for the players. So, according to my first examples, to my former slide, it's not good training, right? It's not good training because there's no context, maybe a bit, but there's no challenge. there's no part of emotion or whatever. Then I have an example of a playing scene. It's from Barcelona against Real Madrid, I think from 95.
Y fue un auténtico baluarte del Barcelona de finales de los 90 y de principios del siglo XXI. Jugador impresionante de todo, de goles que marcaba, jugaba en todas las posiciones. Un espectáculo.
Ahí está ese pase de nuevo para Romario, posición de fuera de juego. Ahí.
Y fue un auténtico baluarte del Barcelona de finales de los 90 y de principios del siglo XXI. Jugador impresionante de todo, de goles que marcaba, jugaba en todas las posiciones. Un espectáculo.
Ahí está ese pase de nuevo para Romario, posición de fuera de juego. Ahí.
Y fue.
Okay, so what we see, there's a connection between the passing drill and this kind of passing, because they're in the back of the opponent, they are turning, they are playing forward. So could that be that this is working, but only with certain information under certain circumstances, because it represents a fractal, a part of the game, of our game we need? I don't know, I just want you to put in doubt, are there good exercise or bad exercise, or is it the coach himself or herself who will decide if it's a good exercise or not, and if it's fitting to the team or not? Because everything we see in tactical periodization, we are seeing and watching from a complex perspective, and in order to explain it, we just have a small video.
The systems that you are part of and that you care about are complex. They're made up of many independent and connected parts, and they're adaptive. Their parts are constantly adjusting, refining, converting, integrating based on what is happening in the world around them. The study of complex adaptive systems, or CAS, can help us understand the world and think in new ways to solve problems. For centuries, we looked at complex systems like these and wondered, how do they work? How do millions of birds collectively flying in one direction turn in an instant and all begin flying in another direction? Initially, we assumed that it must be the result of some amazingly efficient leadership structure, where an alpha bird of some kind gave crystal clear directives to the flock. We soon learned that there was no leader. There were only simple rules that each bird followed according to what its nearest local neighbors were doing. Remember, there is no leader. No bird has overall command and control. There is no global scale awareness of the whole system. It is just a whole mess of birds and a few simple rules that they follow. What we are seeing is a remarkable phenomenon called a superorganism. A system that is made up of hundreds, thousands, or even millions of individual organisms, but that acts like it is a single organism. We can learn a lot about how to design and implement complex adaptive systems from the experts, from nature, things like ants, birds, and fish. Here's an example of simple rules leading to complex behaviors in a human system. Simple, but with a big effect. All human systems are complex adaptive systems too. We are independent agents following local simple rules, leading to emergent complexity. Sometimes it can be hard to see the rules, but they are there. And if you understand them deeply, you can see that they are amazingly simple.
So, what is our sport about? Our sport has the really, or has a real tendency to be really chaotic. So, when you watch this, and when I watch this, for me, this has a lot to do with football. Because when you look from the outside, yes, it's chaotic, it's almost unpredictable, it's a really complex situation, but there's a certain kind of interaction. You have to develop a certain kind of empathy in order not to crash, but in the same way, you have to take a lead and you have to take the initiative to create something. So we also have these two quotes you probably already read, and they have something to do with the collective and the influence of one part into the collective. And if we want to train football from an individual perspective, we are missing and we are losing this kind of connectivity to the others. Because in football and in complex systems, it can be that 1 + 1 is not 2. It can be 3, but it even can be 0. And probably you all know from your context some players who are in your team. They are able that the other players can play better because they are at the pitch. But you probably also know some players who are exactly the other way around. When they are there, they maybe have a certain kind, I don't know, of negativity or whatever, but they are not able to share something with their teammates. But football, as it is a collective sport, is a lot about interaction and it's a lot about sharing things. So, what I can just recommend you to see is just to train or to change the focus. For me, as you, thank you Felipe for being a poster boy right now. Okay. For me, when I was in Porto, and there was a really old coach, but he was not doing really complex things. You know, it was doing exercise I already knew, but the way how he did was completely different. So, for example, imagine we were in a penalty area. And we were playing kind of like street football, like 7 against 7 with one goalkeeper, and when the defenders get the ball, they have to play out of the area and then they can attack. It's really simple. So now you can imagine, okay, if this would be our exercise, how would I introduce this to a team? And he said to us, because it was an exercise at the very beginning of the training, he said, I want you to build relations. It's not a critic in my context or in Germany, but I never heard in Germany before that some coach told me, I want you to build relations. Also because I think sometimes things here have to be, as I said, clear, yes or no, right or wrong. There's no gray inside. But he was focusing on building relations. Why? Because the positions, maybe we are together, a better central defender pair than somebody else, because we have a certain kind of connectivity. Another example of this, you probably, as you played football before, you not played football in your club, but you also played football in the park, on the streets, I don't know where, and you have maybe you can remember or imagine, if he's not here in the moment, so it's a good time to do it. Imagine your best friend. Think on your best friend. You were always playing football with him. When you played with him football and you played against other people, there was a certain moment where you already knew what he will do. But the opponent will not know. Why? Because you already have this kind of connectivity, because you knew each other. That long time, and you have played many times together. So, because you have played many times together, there are rising some other opportunities of interaction. Because I already know he will go into depth and I can play a pass. Like this. So, within our decisions, our emotions have a big, big influence and a big, big part. There's a saying from the Greeks, we are slaves of our passion. So, and even now, as you have to know, I have 2 kids, and so I have to go to the supermarket also several times. And, you know, like with the bucket list for men, with pictures. But, so I let my emotions go at that moment, but there are certain studies about the influence of emotions. So, the emotions decide in 85% of the cases. And even more than the half of the products you buy, usually, it's not planned. And it's not because your little son is standing and saying, no, I really want to have this, and otherwise he's crying. No, it's not only about this. And I want to show this, or I have brought an example, and we can have a look at it together, and maybe afterwards you know, and maybe afterwards you have a certain feeling. We will see. So, probably it was part of my generation, and there's a lot of people out here as well in my generation. You have a certain feeling just because you heard already this kind of how he puts his fingers on the outlet, that you already had, okay, there's a connection to Pringles in that case. Just because of the noise. This is because of the semantic markers you have, or we all have in our brain. Because, again, our brain works in circumstances. So, for example, a circumstance in a played situation, okay, maybe it's representative. And in the end, the advertising industry really knows that well, and knows well how to use it, because just because of the noise, the sound, some of you, especially those guys who already ate Pringles before, they just need to hear this, or just the sound of the chip eaten, and then you already have a certain taste maybe in your mouth, or you already have a certain feeling to say, well, now it's really early in the morning, but maybe later, or as we have at 11 o'clock important World Cup game, maybe that's also a good idea. So, to set this kind of markers and to know about this, it's also really important for a coach. Because when I know, you can put certain markers, good or positive, and negative ones. So, for example, a player who had been criticized really toughly for a certain action will not ever do it again. It's the same like, well, it's a bad example, but more or less it's the same like with dogs, no? Because if you tell a dog to do a certain thing and he's not doing, you punish him, and if he's doing a certain thing you wanted him to do, you give him something, so he recognizes, always when I do this, I get something, so I will do it again. And with players, it's more or less the same. It's a bad example, but it's more or less the same. Because when you give a player something to say, yeah, well done, that was a good action. Maybe even, why? Because you did this and this, now there arises a situation. Perfect. So, this is a possibility for us to influence players, because in the end, it's about the emotions. The emotions will bring you into action. The circumstance that you are here has something to do with the thing that you decided to be here. Why you decided to be here? Was it rational? Was it because somebody asked you and say, yeah, you have to be here, okay? Just my coaches. And a lot of time, or I assume a lot of you were here because they have a certain emotion which connects you to here. Is it curiosity? Or is it the connection to this place? Is it the connection to technical periodization? Is it the connection to medical school? Whatever, but there's a certain kind of connection that drives you. So, for us, when we want to decide these questions, how, what, but especially why. Especially why, it's the most important thing. If you have a why, you know why you want to do things. It's the most important message also for our players and for the whole staff and even for ourselves. The human being itself is competitive. We really like to compete. In each situation we really like to compete. If we are able to do a game or a certain competition, everybody immediately is on. So for example, with our selected teams, we have like a ritual or a habit. When we are having lunch or when we are eating afterwards, we are doing like Gökhan is always in my head, and then we have really mind games about that. About playing scissors, rock, and how do you say, and paper. So and all the staff is doing it, the players are doing it, and it's just a small thing, but it's a competition. And just this competition has such an influence at the culture, the atmosphere of the whole team. Because it's, you know, nobody wants to be second, nobody wants to lose. But this is also something we have to keep in mind. In football, I don't know how it is in other countries. In Germany, we have a lot of this discussion that the result is not important, or so important and so on. But I say yes, it's true. The result is not that important. But which message we give to our players? Because maybe on Sunday when everything is finished, you are together with your family, and maybe it's a day like today, so there's no sun shining, like typical Hamburg weather, and you decide to play cards or something like this. Who wants to be second, or who wants to be losing while playing cards? Nobody wants it. But of course it happens. This is the same in football. Nobody wants to lose, but it happens. It happens. And I want my players always to win. But the way, how, I have to decide. I have to decide. Because if I accept that they do something completely different what we are doing during the week, that's not education, or that's not improving performance. But if you play, you always want to win. And especially if you're trained emotionally, so in the face of competition, it helps a lot to set this kind of markers. Because only if you are in a state of, which is really emotionally, you can get this certain kind of information. So the why could be the principles of play. And maybe you know when you put in Google, you put in technical periodization, and really quick, and maybe even by Google Images or something like that, you get the whole tree of principle and sub-principle and sub-principle and so on. And sometimes, and this is really interesting also in doing the master, because as Felipe said, in the end it also comes a bit to everybody has has its own interpretation of tactical periodization, which sometimes makes it a bit more difficult to understand it in order to find your own way. But when you say principles of play, you mean, for example, okay, always when we lose the ball, we have to go in the counter pressing, and we have to win the ball within 5 seconds, otherwise we have to go down. Okay. That could be a principle of play. But the problem is, if you divide it too much into a tree, maybe, or it has to be coherent, and to develop this, it's not that easy. So sometimes, I think, it's easier to say, okay, we have a lot of things which influences us. So when we talk about opportunities we talk about affordances. So an affordance is, for example, I see this chair and I want to sit. Why? Because in my context, it's usual to sit on a chair. So you just perceive an affordance which relates to the things you are able to do and you already did. For example, with the chair. In football, you're only able to do certain things where you know you're capable of. So maybe I'm not perceiving the same affordances like Pedri is doing because he's a better football player. And he knows how to manage his feet. And this is why he's perceiving a possibility to play a pass in a certain area where I cannot pass the ball. But which relates to this thing, science has found out that all of this, so values, fears, motivation, goals, strategy, attention, and the perception of affordances, influence our decision and influence the players, and also the other way around. But, as you can see, in different time scales. So, if I'm perceiving an opportunity, and as I'm talking a lot, maybe I'm perceiving the opportunity to drink something, then I say, okay, that's in that moment. But our values, our fears, the culture we are living in, it's not, or you're not able to change it within 1 second, or even within 1 day or 1 month. Things we are doing as, for example, in the German culture, and we talked about it before. Professor Dr. Carsten Holländer was in Peru, and it's about the timing, you know. If you call somebody, if you call a taxi and say you want to be the taxi there in 1 hour, maybe it's on the same day, more or less. So there's not that strange or strong connectivity to being on time, like usually we have as Germans. So for us, as coaches, in order to create a culture, we can choose our point of intervention. And there's not only one. But we have to keep in mind, if we have certain values, for example, within a team, we have the value, we stay together like a family. And the family means we support each other in each situation. We can imagine a lot of situations within the game where this value counts. And as you know maybe from yourself, in a stressful situation it all comes down to what is really deep inside yourself. So, for example, in school you learn something, but now you're under pressure, you're not able to tell it. But the value of the families, which has such a strong impact, you will always remember. And if you perceive this is my team and it's my family and I will always defend them, and I will defend them, and there's my goalkeeper, and I will always defend them, so I have to block the shoot. I have to prevent them to score. Why? Because of our values, not because of our principles of play. Because our shared values will be stronger in a stressful situation than any principle of play. Because sometimes it's also a critic, yeah, but you know, the coach, he didn't tell me to do that, so I'm not doing it. Or I didn't, even in certain divisions, some players said, yeah, but I don't know how you want to do this, so I'm not doing it. Otherwise I could make a mistake and you can criticize me. No, but in the end you are staying in the football pitch and you have to play football and you have to take your own decisions. And if you're not able to take this responsibility, then we have this kind of values, motivations. Are you responsible for your team or are you not? So, in order for a team to be really good synchronized, it's also important to perceive the same affordances, and we will come to that a bit later. When we see a player's performance and the player's performance in training, there are a lot of influential aspects, and they are from a study, or from a current study in Sweden at ICA Stockholm. They are doing a lot of things like this, and it's really interesting to go there and to see, because they are doing a practical scientific approach, if you want to take it like this. And they define, okay, the player in the center is influenced by a lot of groups, by our club, but also by the teammates, peers like his friends, from school and from his family. And they are also influenced by the media, by education, by the youth culture, which maybe now is different than 10 years ago. Our role models, what role models do we have today and do our players have today? And what role models did we have before? I assume later in the presentation you will see at least one role model of you, which is Michael Jordan, and now you can already think about, okay, what has Michael Jordan to do in the presentation about football, but later. And you can also, but you also know the youth culture today has like influences like YouTube stars or whatever, and people we don't know, or at least I don't know any name of them. So, but this is an influence. So, in order, and all these influences constrain, they shape our decisions. And because all these things shape our decisions, it's important to keep this in mind. Because in the end, everything what shapes our decisions leads to the possibility that I play a pass in that direction or in that direction. And that doesn't mean that I want to complicate things. It's just important to keep all this in mind, especially if you are coming to a new context.